Hey guys, Alcumulus here. Today I want to talk about Marathon and what I would say are quite a bit of the problems with the game. So a lot of people have played the game, they shared their kind of, experiences with the overall gameplay, the gunplay, the extraction part of the game, some of the NPCs, UIs and stuff. But I want to focus a little bit more on the art direction itself and some of the inspirations and vibes in the game and why I feel like it's fundamentally a core issue of the game. I don't see a lot of people really talking about it, at least not from this angle. And I'm gonna at the very end cycle back a little bit to one of the other games that has a fairly similar art direction, but is doing a far better job. And I'm not gonna spoil what the game is. You're gonna find out at the end. I'm also gonna do a separate review on it. So that you exactly get like all of the examples. We're gonna go through them and why I think when it comes to like this very futuristic, very industrial design, why is the superior product in the end? So some of you guys might not remember, Marathon was known last year mostly because of a massive controversy where they've apparently, I guess I can now say that it did happen, they did lift art from the portfolio of an artist, and two here on Twitter mentioned the reason why this even happened, why this became apparent, why people even started noticing these things is because even though the building blocks of this specific art style seem very, very basic, and some of this we've seen, I think, now I'm trying to think Half-Life maybe a little bit, but in general you see this way more in general industrial designs. Like these blocks are just very, very simplistic, and theoretically anyone can create them, anyone can have this kind of portfolio. But there are two problems to it. First, it is in general not very common, even in simplistic designs. You're not going to see this industrial, like artistic industrial design very often, in general, like more broadly speaking, even in video games. And second, specific parts of the portfolio of the artist and two here did actually end up as decals, as textures in the game, and that has been confirmed. As you can see the screenshots here, this has actually been confirmed by people. And so that ended up with what Antu called resolve with Bungie and Sony Interactive Entertainment to my satisfaction. So I don't know what the satisfaction is, whether whether Antu has been paid by Sony or Bungie. That's kind of a little bit irrelevant, but it did send Bungie into a bit of a spiral, especially that their initial beta tests were not very good. The impressions people had were just not very positive back in 2025. And there is another, I wouldn't really call this controversy, but like a very weird happening again from Bungie. It's this embargo and gameplay guidelines. Now I'm bringing this up because this does not really happen very often. You're not going to see this, I would say, almost ever coming out from anyone, from any studio, because like what would the reason even be? If the product is out there and reviewers are getting like early access to the product and are able to review like the kind of like a almost final copy of the game, what would there be a reason for it to have an embargo? And also, let's just read for this one because it's very weird. Marathon launches worldwide at 10 a.m. PST on March 5. I think that was the server slam, might be incorrect, but I think that was the server slam. There is no embargo on any coverage, impressions, live streams, VODs, or assets. Okay. You can publish content as you play the game. However, we ask you to hold your full review and impressions until you play Cryo Archive, Marathon's pinnacle endgame zone and experience, which will be unlocked in the second half of March. To be clear, this isn't a mandate but a request suggestion. Now that obviously puts all of the reviewers in like a very weird position, because as is probably known, reviewers never reach endgame in any sort of way. They probably, if they do have the time, which rarely happens, they do play through the majority of the content, or rather they spend like 10, maybe 20 hours into the game, which I think is fair to have a review, sometimes you're going to have impression already after like 30 minutes or like 1 hour into the game, and that solidifies within 10 hours and nothing really changes, okay? So expecting people to wait and then you're going to release a review earlier than that, and now your review is considered quote-unquote incomplete, but it's still a review of the game. So this in itself is a very weird ask to give to the reviewers. And do you think the reviewers complied? No, they really did not. Or rather, they've released their reviews, some of them, way before this embargo was even posted. Here it says March the 6th. Some reviews came out earlier than that, so oopsie. Well, happens, life, that's how it is. But in general, it's not looking great. Okay, so we have these two things, then the reviews started coming in, and we have the first one from PC Gamer, an absolute eyesore. So this is, as you can see here, this is from the end of February this year. An absolute eyesore. Marathon's biggest issue seems to be its poor UI design, that it's confusing players. I have no idea where I'm at, what I'm looking at. Now, the game I mentioned at the very beginning, its UI is even more confusing, if you can imagine, but it's cleaner, and that's basically where it wins. And this is like your recurring theme in the general impressions people are saying, and I'm gonna kind of laser focus here on some of the comments from people. I'm gonna laser focus a little bit on where I think the core issues are with it. So someone here mentioned Marathon gonna be the first ever font swap game. There's like 20 different combinations of fonts, boldness levels, sizes, spacing, all caps versus regular caps, all on one mini page. Just an absolute eyesore. They really need to pull back on the whole abstract thing for the UI. We're gonna have a look at it. And yes, this is problem number one, the consistency of the UI. This is like a classic industrial design, and if you've ever designed your UIs ever in your entire life, if you've done any UI design in your life, one of the core rules, you select at most 3 different font sizes and at most 2 different font types, better 1 font type, and you use these different sizes and styles very sparingly. If you don't, you end up with a hot mess like this one. Now, this might probably work, and this is a single mini apparently. This might end up well if someone's building out their portfolio and this is kind of like, oh, here are my designs, you know, as a showcase. Then obviously you want to showcase like, you know, top level, not a working product, obviously. Like, this is not my UI design for a web page, for instance. That would obviously not be acceptable. Very, very dirty and just messy and confusing. But in general, like, oh, here are the things I can do, you know, or like you're showcasing, I don't know, like a JavaScript framework or a CSS framework for designing web pages. Then yeah, okay, so here's what it can do. Then you could showcase stuff like this. But if this is your final product, if this ends up in your game, you are doing a tremendously bad job. This is confusing, okay? This looks just pretty freaking bad. And okay, so one other thing I want to point out here, but I'm gonna point out this way later as well. It's the colors. So there we have some greens here. We have the brighter green. We have the neon green. We have the regular kind of, I would just call it grass green here, but kind of like, it's still, can't remember what the color is called, but also one of brighter greens, like bright grass green or something. These are warm colors, but you're going to see a lot of cold colors, like the blue here under Oni, for instance. You're going to see a lot of these cold colors, and that really doesn't work. The other thing is the general flatness and kind of the general style of the designs. So in Marathon, it's not merely that they went for this kind of industrial design, but they went for this very hardcore retro design that you might have remembered from like System Shock, where it was partially intentional. It was the computer and the kind of hacker vibes were intentional. The designs themselves, not so much. It was just like a trends back then and limitations of the era, especially when it comes to kind of like the, you know, the computer fonts here at the very top, the monospace computer fonts. that was back then technically very much a thing. But here it's kind of, and you're forcibly restricting this to look like a retro game. Now, normally that would work if you are building like an indie product and you're honing like 100% on that retro feel, and you know the game mechanics themselves and like the gameplay itself, it follows that retro feel, but otherwise that just doesn't work. Because if you now go right into the gameplay and then you see that the gameplay is like super high spec, you have a lot of bloom, you have very high quality details, and it's fully 3D, it just clashes very badly with this very, very minimalistic, forced retro design. And so the other thing someone brought up here is that, yes, this is one of the characters, this is how she used to look like in one of the trailers last year, which was a good trailer, but I did not like the character designs. Now this is how the character looks like in the game menu, in the loadout menu. And this looks just really bad because, as I said, it's the shaders, the lighting that is just way too modern for this kind of design. It kind of looks like someone was trying to redo or was trying to do like a Tron game and really capitulate on this retro feel. But everything just seems incredibly unappealing, and especially when you look at the colors here. As I said, it's about the cold and the warm colors, and you're going to see a lot of blues, a lot of these like cold pinks here, like the gloves. You're going to see a lot of purples, and these are all cold colors. They're basically just very sad, very sometimes depressing, sometimes they evoke rather negative emotions. Now, if you were to contrast this with some elements that were like neon green, or I can't remember what the color is called, halo green or something, but basically trying to contrast some of these elements with brighter colors, that would have worked so much better in general. And this is a thing I see, a lot in gacha games, for instance. There's the way the color palette works, the way the overall color selection for specific design work is just like, there's a lot of people sitting down on this and trying to think of the consistency, trying to, build out the overall art direction with these colors. And here in Marathon, it just looks really unappealing, really, really bad. And another thing that someone pointed out here, RV on Twitter, who unsurprisingly lead UI designer game dev UI art. And he points out this: manifesting a single player game with this art direction, simply gorgeous. Single player game. The original Marathon was a single player game, was kind of like a sci-fi horror vibes a little bit. I can't remember what the engine was back then, but it looked very much like Doom. But it kind of focused more on sci-fi, more on the horror vibes. And I felt like if they wanted to really build a successor to that Marathon, they should have gone for a purely PvE game, purely single player experience, and combine like the best parts of like System Shock, Marathon, fear in terms of suspense and building tension. If they really mixed all of these together to, instead of going into, the extraction shooter genre, instead of going into that direction, they would have built a incredibly solid single player experience that would have worked much, much better. And I said, I talked, already a lot about the contrast, but you can see it incredibly well here in some of these screenshots. Like this here, very high definition, reflections, a lot of shading. But then the model itself, the character model, the UI, it's very flat, very simplistic, and it just does not really work with the rest of the game. Like this is a very hardcore retro vibe. And you see this also here. And this does really not work with the gameplay itself, with the characters in the game, it just clashes horribly. And also, just to point out one other thing, every single playable character in the game looks like an NPC. Like, these are traditionally, these designs like this were used for evil NPCs that you would fight against in single player games, in sci-fi games. Like, the years of tradition that has been building up in the gaming industry, you cannot simply, make one game and try to win against it. You are going to fail. Because just look at these designs here, bottom left corner. Like, what are these even? They're ugly. They look negative, they look evil. They look like things you are, as a player character, supposed to fight against. You're not supposed to play as one of these NPCs. Like, these could be joke NPCs in like Quake 3 Arena or another competitive shooter where you would have an event and you would have these like funny, you would have like a call-up with Marathon, for instance, or System Shock, and you would have these characters as like call-up characters. Yeah, sure, you can have skins like that then. That would have been pretty funny, but otherwise, these are really ugly designs, okay? And the funny thing is that Paul Tassi, who has been... oh my god, he's been shilling for the industry for so many years. And recently, I think with Highguard and with Marathon last year and also this year, he's just absolutely giving up. Marathon has peaked at 75,342 concurrent players today, a 47.5% drop from day one, and that's unfortunately true. I would say it's still solid. I think with the current direction, the game is still able to have like so what I want to in summary say, it's not a terrible game. It will definitely have some kind of cult following in the extraction shooter subgenre. It will definitely have people playing the game, but again, is it worth $40 at launch? No. Is it going to have a big enough audience to possibly sustain itself, considering like all of the production costs, all of the employee salaries, all of the future expansion and investments that need to be made into the game? No. It simply will not maintain itself. Because how else, right? Like, it's simply not going to work. And I kind of liked also this comment, which is like completely out of the left field, but summarizes some of the edge cases when it comes to gaming experience. My review of Marathon after my gaming session: hit play, asked to install kernel level anti-cheat. I declined. Game closed, uninstalled. 10 out of 10, would never play again. Yeah, some people do have this kind of experience, which is very funny. And yeah, oh yeah, sorry. So what I want to say, yeah, the game I mentioned at the very beginning, and there will definitely have a separate video. We're gonna go into the details on the designs, on the music direction as well, and the overall gameplay here. And the game is Arknight's Antfield. If you are familiar with Arknight's, the original one, it has a superb art direction, leaning a little bit into, I wouldn't really say industrial design, but this kind of very, very modern basic modern futuristic design. In the first Arknights, that was the focus. Amazing art direction, amazing character designs, very strong audio as well. The audio direction was also incredibly distinct and pleasing in the first Arknights. I was very impressed. If anything, characters, story, very dark but satisfying, and the audio, this is what's winning me over in the first Arknights. So far in the second one, I have very mixed feelings about the game, but the audio, the ambience, the kind of FX, amazing. Chef's kiss so far. And what I kind of wanted to just kind of briefly highlight here is that Antfield does the overall industrial design way better. First, because it doesn't go so hardcore into it. And second, what you straight away see from this piece of art from the game, it does balance the cold colors, which are used very sparingly actually in Antfield. It does balance it out with more positive colors like the neon greens here, like the oranges, the cyan here. There's a lot of gray, but it's a brighter gray. So you have more focus on like the traditional kind of industrial, I would say more in the direction of like white and gray and a little bit of black, rather than the hardcore retro vibe that we've seen in Marathon. But in general, our direction does a way better job than Marathon, and I can see this one potentially making quite a lot more money than Marathon. But we're gonna see, we're gonna have a separate video on that. For now, that is it. And of course, in summary, let us have a look at the Concordian timeline. Where are we here? Okay, Concord, the original sin. This one's done. Highguards officially coming down March the 12th. Marathon has released March the 5th. Let's see where this is gonna go. I am not gonna keep my fingers crossed. I don't think it's gonna succeed whatsoever. But yeah, let's see. And then the next one is Horizon Hunters Gathering. I'm sorry, I don't think this one should even be on this timeline. This is a completely separate thing coming in 2026. But let's see whether Marathon is going to officially be Concord 3.0 or not. Let's see. For now, that is it from my side. Hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I see you in the next one. Mata ne!